This is John Bower, and I'm here with the great and powerful and wonderful Ashly Poyer from PeakMade. Ashly, thank you for joining me today. Would you introduce yourself to the good people for those, the few that don't know who you are?
I'm sure it's more than a few. Thank you for having me, John. I know we have been trying to do this, so it feels good to finally podcast with you before the end of the year. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ashly Poyer, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for PeakMade Real Estate. I have been with Peak for over 14 years. I will get to celebrate 15 years next June, which is super exciting. And I'm sure, like many people in student housing specifically, I started on site as a part time leasing consultant, really just looking to get free rent. That was the only way my parents would let me stay off campus. Is if I could cover my rent. And I, at that time, had no idea that this was even like a career option. I knew that there were property managers, but I just never thought about it. And probably within the first 30 days, I was hooked. Loved it. And over my career with Peak, have sat in a lot of different roles on site and on the corporate team, and now have the pleasure of overseeing sales and marketing for Peak.
Hmm, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So I am already hooked. Tell me what about it? I mean, you're in your teens, 20s, whatever, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're hooked into student housing. What was it about it that kind of captured your attention, or your imagination?
It's interesting when I started with Peak, my original like dream job was to be a country singer, and I cannot carry a tune, so that wasn't going to happen. My second
Wait,
dream job,
you're serious?
I'm so
And you,
serious, and my middle name is like the perfect stage name. I have two. My
Mhm.
second middle name is my mom's maiden name, which is like
Second middle
obviously a
name.
security question, so don't use it to
Okay,
try to log in anything. But yeah, so my middle name is Miranda Dunn. Is that not the most perfect country name
that
for country
is
singer?
quite
Like, it's such a great stage name.
that's quite country actually.
I was not blessed with the gift of vocals. My little sister was, but not me. So my second dream job was to be a broadcast journalist. So I loved Barbara
Really?
Walters. I loved writing. I still love writing. Yeah, so I went to Sam Houston State University, where Dan Rathers went to school, and
Mm.
had a great like journalism program. And I don't know, I got into it and I just didn't have like the spark. I ended up really enjoying a lot of my marketing and PR classes though. And it was my junior year when I started working as a part-time leasing consultant. And I really just was like trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life? Because I don't think I want to do this. I don't even know if I want to finish this.
Mm.
And, I like to think it was just like the perfect opportunity for something new to inspire me. And it did. I really enjoyed being on the sales floor. I loved closing leads, I loved
Mm.
closing sales. Before I started overseeing marketing as well, my first role at the like corporate level was overseeing the sales team. And I loved that. There is something so satisfying about like knowing that you have fully understood like what this person's looking for and what's going to get them across the finish line and then doing it. Whew,
Mm. I
so
just
good.
came across this book, Never Split the Difference by Timothy Voss, and he talks about tactical empathy, about actually entering into that other person's world and kind of getting what's going on in their mind and then closing it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is quite fun.
it
Um,
is.
so part I was drawn to you and wanted to do an interview with you because I experience you as being this powerful kind of force, this powerful voice, perhaps not a singer, haven't experienced that side of it. And I came to find out that I'm a huge nerd when it comes to Clifton Strength Finders and found out that you've got significance and command in your top five. And so it's like when
Oh
you
yeah.
walk into a room, people kind of know. And so today we were going to talk about that, but that's why I was really intrigued by you. But just looking at some of the stuff I saw on your profile on LinkedIn and everything else, I wanted to talk about vision and empowerment.
Yeah.
There's an old video game called Skate or Die, and some of my friends
I've
and I
heard of it.
changed it to vision or die. It was like,
Mhm.
man, we want
For
big
sure.
vision. Let's go for it. So I want to start there because you talked a little bit about what inspired you to get into student housing, your folks saying you have to get some free rent, but then closing those leads and having that team. So I'm curious when you started to realize the importance of having a vision for your career, for yourself, for the
Mhm.
community you're at.
Yeah, what a good question. I don't actually know when realized that's what I was doing. When I first joined the corporate team, it was in a regional marketing specialist role. And it was at the time where a lot of student operators were creating that type of like traveling sales and marketing support role. And it was the first one for Peak. And they were very clear. We're going to start small. You're going to have three properties, two properties in College Station, which is where I spent almost all of my time because it's College Station and it needed that. We're just going to see how this goes. And I remember feeling like that was an opportunity, not pressure. But I mean, it could have not gone as well. And I would have ended up jobless. Turns out that that was a good call. I put school on hold to like take
Hmm.
that promotion without asking my parents. I mean, I was 22. I feel like I could have, I made the decision and then rolled with it. But yeah, I mean, it didn't feel like a gamble at the time. It just felt like this is gonna, this is an opportunity if I make it one. So like, let's go. Now that I think about it in the way that you asked the question, I do think that maybe there was some vision forming that I might not have been as aware of at the time. And 5, 6 months later, I got an entire portfolio that was 25 properties. They
Hmm.
hired a second one of my role, and that those roles ended up being the origin of the sales team at Peak that I would eventually go on to 4 or 5 years later to become the director of. Um, that it has completely changed and morphed and all sorts of
Uh,
things over the last 8 to 10 years and is now one of the most important parts of the like secret sauce for what makes Peak so successful, which is really wild to think about.
hmm.
Get like butterflies thinking about it.
Why is that? Say more.
It just makes me so I'm really proud of what we built. Back then it was me. I was a team of one person, and now my team is in January it'll be 35 people.
Hmm.
It's
That's-
bananas. And the role that I started in the last 3 to 6 months, Peak, we've like officially elevated that role to be a part of the leadership team. So there are peer levels with regional managers and I think every property management company has had regional managers since they've existed. That
Mhm.
what that role does. It's like tried and true, but it's a big deal to get more people at the table. And that is the result of their hard work, but it's not lost on me that it's the result of the vision that was laid out for the department and then executed really
Hmm.
well.
So many questions here, but I want to mention what you had talked about earlier on our green room. You had just, I mean, we're coming up on Thanksgiving,
Yep.
and you said that you had a bunch of team meetings, and I was like, hey, I'm excited to talk to you about vision. And you said, yeah, we just were laying out the 2030 vision. And I was like, oh, okay. That's a 6 year, 5 year plan there, getting there. So tell me, I'm curious on two fronts. One, I don't want you to spill all of the secret sauce about what the vision is for Peak over the next 5 years. But if you want to, that's fine. This is a safe spot. You can just process that.
Fill away.
So I'm curious on how you, as a woman, you're going to have your own vision, and then you're getting some stuff from like the board, from the executive team. How does that work, I guess, together? So,
Yeah.
like whether it's the people that have financed it, whether it's the people that own the company, and then you have your own unique talents and strengths, your own personal vision. How do you get those two things to morph into, I guess, one vision?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think for me, I am naturally ambitious. You mentioned my strengths, and that obviously those two, that comes with that. So I'm always kind of thinking about how can we do more? How can we do what we do every single day better? I think being able to have a clear understanding, which I do have with my supervisor, Casey Peterson, who's the COO for Peak, and also from our CEO, Bob Clark. I have a really good understanding of where the company is trying to go.
Hmm,
And so for me, that really just kind of becomes the direction that I need to take. But how we take it and what that feels like and what it sounds like and looks like and how quickly we can move and how agile the plan is, all of that I get to do.
hmm. So
And
that's where you
I'm
get to put your
really,
spin on it.
yeah. And, I'm super energized by that work. I love doing it, but I also really find that there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And I take that part really seriously. I also, probably because of my strengths, like to think that if I can figure out a good like formula to craft a team vision or a department vision, and then the goals to execute and meet that vision, then maybe someone inside of Peak or outside of Peak will be inspired by that too. And now we've got two departments doing it and three departments doing it. It just kind of builds on, who says that you have to be told how to do that top down. One of your questions, and I'm going to butcher it, but one of your questions I was really thinking about, it was like, how do you create a vision when there isn't one?
Hmm,
And I'm like, oh my God, I love that question because who says someone has to give that to you? In the absence of a clearly defined one from your supervisor or the head of the company, um, that doesn't have to stop you from figuring out what it could be for your slice of the pie. And for me, I just tried really hard to focus on my slice of the pie, do that well. And through that approach over the last probably 5 to 6 years, people have noticed and have asked me to help with their slice of the pie. And now that like the influence and reach is just organically growing, but it's not coming from me saying, y'all don't have this, so I have made it and I'm going to give this to you. It's instead just letting the work speak for itself.
hmm.
Yeah.
So you said just a second ago, just because there's not a vision that's been clearly laid out for your slice of the pie, it doesn't mean that you can't actually articulate it. But it's my experience that what you're articulating is pretty rare. Not that
Mhm.
people aren't ambitious or they're driven to
Right.
make money or take care of their family or be successful,
Yeah.
but in my estimation, a vision impacts other people
Mm.
positively, like they can buy in and they're willing to sacrifice for the vision and for the person that's casting it. And so earlier you said, I get energized by seeing what that vision. So if Bob or if Casey helps set it or the board or whomever, you get energy from setting what the vision feels like, sounds like, looks like, how it plays out. And I think that to me, that strikes me as unique to you.
Mhm.
It's like the way you're mixing all the pieces together and inviting people into that. That seems to be what's standing up just from my little perspective. So I don't have a question. That was more of a long-winded, hopefully encouragement to you, but that's pretty rare to me that you can, because some people can just put blinders on and work, but you're trying to
Yeah.
widen the net and make space for people to participate in it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I don't know if it's super rare because I don't get to hear a lot of leaders talk about it intimately, like you and I
Mm,
are right now. I'll take your word for it because you've interviewed more people than I have. I do think that it's unique amongst my peers inside of Peak. And I think that's just another differentiator. I think where I see it play out the most is like when I look at the tenure on my team.
Hmm.
I have several managers on the team that have been with Peak for over 10 years, over 15 years. If you just like isolate my leadership level roles, so we on my team define that as managers and directors and above.
Hmm.
Our average tenure is almost 10 years. We have virtually zero turnover in those roles. And I think it's because there is something bigger that the group is working towards. And, my approach to vision and then how to actually work towards getting that is I literally Googled, which is not, it's not sexy at all. I'm not like, a genius. I just Googled best way to lay out a vision for creatives because they need more abstract. And then I Googled best way to lay out a vision for doers because they need tangible. And it's hard to articulate that in a way that lands with both groups,
Hmm.
and not like sacrifice it either way. And I came across this Forbes article that I have shared the link to more times than I can count. I am a champion for this approach. And it was outlined this approach that was called Dream Big, Think Small, Smaller. And when the season that we were in, I at the time was the vice president of sales and had just taken over marketing. So we were blending these two separate teams into one. I wanted to be mindful of the previous leadership style of the leader that was over the marketing team before then. I also had a different culture on the sales team and just like trying to find a way to blend those things together, not merge them, or because then you have to sacrifice stuff. Like,
Hmm.
how can you take the best of everything and blend it into one? And so I was looking for a new approach to lay out a new vision, a new 5-year plan, 3-year plan. And when I found that article, I loved it. So the dream big is what is the 3 to 5 year vision that you're trying to go for?
Hmm.
Define that, clearly define it. And then act small or think small is okay, what do you need to accomplish in each 12-month cycle to get to the 3 to 5 years?
Yeah.
So if you like chunked it up, and the idea being that you're going to layer on top, and then eventually you get to the 5-year vision. And then act small is once you have your first 12-month goals, what are the strategies that you're going to deploy in Q1?
Hmm.
How are you going to change that in Q2 and so on throughout the year to actually achieve the 1 year goal? And I just really loved that approach because it made the vision is for the creatives that need something more aspirational. And then the 1 year quarterly breakdown is for your tactical people who need something really tangible that they can like put a target on and
Hmm.
chase. And 2025 is our third year of the original 3-year plan. And we're on track. And that feels so good to know that, you can get that many people behind something big, um, break it into these chunks, adjust based on how the business needs you to adjust, and
That
still
was
stay
3 years
on track.
ago, COVID.
So this would have been, we laid it out in 2022. So 25 will be our third year.
Math was never my strong suit.
Ah,
So it was post COVID when you're laying this out.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm like, I love the big picture. I'm like, let's go,
right.
we're going to triple the size of, the beds that we've got this year. Let's
Yeah.
go. And the details are a little bit harder. I always needed that integrator person to come and break it down into smaller chunks. But what you just said, another question I had written for you, just to think about was, and I think you just articulated it, but how do you get the buy-in? So when everyone's around the table, those regionals or those senior leaderships, that's easier. But then what do you do practically to get the level down to where it goes all the way down to that first leasing manager that was
Yeah.
you, a
Yeah.
few years ago? How do you
Yeah.
get them to buy in?
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, I think it first starts with getting the buy-in on everyone on your team, right? And the way that we do that is I understand what the company goals are. And then the first part, the vision that I craft is in support of those company goals.
Hmm.
Typically, it will stretch us past what we probably need to do to actually achieve those goals, which is intentional. And then after that, I like socialize that with the leaders on my team. And the way that we're structured is we refer to all of our like specialized columns, if you'll think about it that way, on the team as are the verticals. Every vertical has a lead, and then the
Hmm.
lead is responsible for crafting the 1 year goal or goals and then breaking that into quarterly chunks to support the team's 1 year goal.
Hmm.
And because they get to participate in that part, not only participate, the expectation is that they lead that, then they share those goals with their peers, refine it. Everyone agrees because everyone plays a role in helping that vertical get to that goal. Everyone agrees to it. We make a commitment to each other. Now I have 15 people who are like, that's the goal. And this quarter, to get to the end of our 24 goals, this quarter, we've got to end here. How do we do that?
Yeah, that's what I
A
was going to
lot of
ask.
that is now through the influence that we have with our on-site teams, and with the regional managers and other support departments to actually be able to change behaviors, change processes, whatever it is we need to do to achieve that. But I think it first starts with our team. After we nail that down and everyone's bought in, we all know what direction we're rowing and how hard we need to be rowing. Then we first start with evaluating what processes exist today that would prevent us from getting there.
Mm.
And the only rule that I have actually two rules. I have two rules. The first one is whatever new way of doing it, if we're going to do that, we come up with has to be scalable. So if we add 50 more properties, we don't have a problem. The process still works. Second rule is we have to figure out anything that we can do to eliminate execution risk. So if there is a requirement that 90 leasing managers click this one button every single week for that to be right on websites, for example, then there's too much risk there. Now
Hmm.
we also have to have someone to audit that. And I mean, that's not a great use of time. Um, so those are the only two rules. And a lot of what we've come up with our partners like you and all of the technology partners out there has just greatly reduced the exposure to
Hmm.
executing sales and marketing day in and day out. But it's also cleared out a lot of admin work at the site level so that they can be more effective and be on the sales floor with their team and be out in their markets and doing things that you can't automate, you know?
The human element. So, last question on this buy-in, and then we can go on. How do y'all do? Vision inevitably brings a measure of conflict where you kind of have
Mm,
to address the elephant in the room, and then it's like you want people's feedback, and at the same time, you have to lead them somewhere. So, as long as they're heard, but it's just kind of this
yeah,
where you can just be this commanding, like, suck it up, buttercup, let's
yeah.
move. So how do you personally like I know you have command, so you don't care about conflict, meaning
No, I
we just
welcome it. I
whatever
think
the
it's
issue,
so
yeah.
healthy. Yeah.
So,
What you don't, I didn't tell you about my strengths is I have no relationship strengths in my top 10.
how do I?
Most of the people that report to me at least have one.
Oh yeah.
I have several people that report to me that is the theme that they lead with. Um, which is great because I don't have any. Yeah, every team needs them, you know?
None. I have
Um,
zero.
I I mean none, and most of them live in my bottom 10. So, and it just is what it is. But what I have learned, probably through more of my influencing strengths, so I can be more effective, if I'm being honest, is that nobody who is like stifled or muted is in it all the way.
Hmm.
But what I try to focus on with my team, specifically the ones that need that emotional outlet. Strengths, that's one of the areas that strengths has been super helpful for me because it helps me understand things that I might not understand on my own, um, with logic. Like relationship strength just is one of the 34 options. It exists. That's not, I think to say, oh, well, they're just too emotional is like, it's far too reductive. And also, what do you do with that? But to be able to point to, oh, this person is a relator. And so maintaining trust is important to them. That's how I will be the most effective leader for them, but that's how they will also be the most effective member of this team. That makes it like a solvable problem where sometimes the emotional side of things can feel really overwhelming to me. And so, when we're in our like group meetings together, which isn't very frequently, but when we do get to come together in person, we'll open those meetings with like a mental health check. Let's talk about where's everybody at and what is draining our mental health at work. And I find that by giving them the space, and then typically there's like trends, right? So now they're not alone in it.
Hmm.
Um, Likely people with similar strengths are dealing with the same thing, so now they can like help each other out. And then they know that this can't go on forever. So there's like parameters. So we're going to have our mental health check for the first 2 hours of our meeting. So everybody has time to get in there. And then the next 2 hours is going to be how can we reduce the impact of these things? By doing that, one of the first things we do is figure out how much of this can we control?
Hmm.
How much of this is out of our control? And if it's out of our control, then let's stop putting energy towards trying to control it. We need to come up with a way to minimize the impact of that thing out of our control. And so like the way I visualize it in my head is, you got to get it out, you air it out. Now you've just got this bubble of frustration. Now, how do you make that productive?
Hmm.
And for me that comes in a lot of different ways with the people on my team who might not process as quickly as I do. But some of it's just, are you ready? Are you looking for advice? Do you just want to vent? Just little things like that that help me know how to insert myself. And sometimes they say just vent. I'm like, all right, well, let's air it out.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's
that's it.
interesting. What you're describing to me is attachment. You're trying to get the team attached because when a team
Mm,
is on the same page, when a team is together and on fire, they can change the world. They can take on the world. And
totally.
so it's like the way our brains are wired. We want to be connected, and then our fear center kicks in, and we can't see anything because we're anxious about something with the home life or uh, whatever the rates or
Yeah.
what do you call it? There's heavy supply in the market in whatever location you're in, and so so that's fascinating. So I want to. You said something at the beginning that was so good. Um, but you were what you described that kind of giving you the butterflies was the ability to raise people up to the same kind of corporate level, like they had a place at the
Yeah.
table.
Hmm.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about the W Collective. I want to talk about just that empowering, making space for people, giving them opportunity. Can you tell me a little bit about the W Collective? Tell me what it's about, because that was a lot of, at least some of your influence that you brought to the
Hmm.
table. So start there, and then I'll ask you some questions around empowerment and making space for
Yeah.
others.
Yeah, totally. So the W, excuse me, I'm sorry. The W Collective it is very much like a grassroots network for women, specifically in student housing. And our goal is to create space for women to connect with each other. And, ideally that turns into ongoing like education and learning opportunities through like conferences and panels. It turns into network sessions so you can meet
Mhm.
other women leaders or just expand your network. Um, and then I think what it will eventually turn into, and has already started more organically, but we're hoping to have a more formal program around this, is women mentoring each other and
Mm.
just creating a like catalyst to make those connections so that you can find more of like a formal executive mentor. Um, Out maybe even outside of your organization, because I find that super helpful,
Yeah.
that will just help you expand and grow differently than you may if you did not have that resource.
Well,
um
that's so huge. If you look at like what happened in the 40s and 50s and how we got so segmented and broken apart just as
Mhm.
families. And then you talk about COVID and then the virtual world
Yeah.
and then women like breaking the glass ceiling. So having someone to be able to help form and shape someone is huge. I went to a luncheon this week. A buddy of mine started a nonprofit called You Can Mentor, and it's
Mhm.
specifically geared to kiddos that are in need of mentoring. But I think that's massive to have some other woman who's gone before you and saying, all right, these are the pitfalls. This is what you need to think about. This is how you deal with the political crap and the emotional stuff.
Yeah.
That's huge. Wait,
Yeah, and I think it's what's really cool. I actually have my first, I've been mentoring an incredible young lady who's at a totally different company than me, that we like connected through some of the W Collective stuff. And it's been so interesting to be a support for someone that I have zero context for their day to day.
mhm,
It's like, oh my gosh, this is actually it's a great, I'm learning a lot as the mentor. It's
that,
great for me, but it also, I think, helps me provide more so like mirror off of her in a way that is more beneficial for her, because I don't have all of the background or the baggage. I'm not weighed down by all of that. We just finished our first year and I think it's going great. She asked me to stay on, so that's that's good. But yeah, to be able to just help those connections and create a platform for people who might not be as comfortable reaching out to a complete stranger that they've never met but have only heard about and asking, just trying to create the space and the right environment to make that easier too.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah, it's always, no matter what, it's usually a little awkward to kick off that type of relationship, but you can press through. Tell me, for you, maybe you didn't have a specific mentor, but who are some
Mhm.
women in the space that you've been like, I kind of honored them. I wanted to follow something that they were doing,
Yeah.
just as like a model.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a ton of them. I typically always reference she's one of my dearest friends now. She When I actually moved to Atlanta, her name is Allison Weber. She's not in student housing. She just took a step back from multifamily, but she was in student housing. She actually started with Place Properties, Peak's predecessor company, when she was in college too, and just had a very full circle moment, came back to Peak as the vice president of marketing right around the time that I had relocated from Houston to Atlanta.
Mhm.
And so I got to see her in action up close and personal. And, she took a distressed team and rebuilt it,
Mm.
expanded it, and really, really like i- improve their performance in a very meaningful way. Um, and I just really respected what she did. I'm like, that is what the sales team needs. Shortly after that, I was promoted to the director of sales and
Mhm.
had a lot of big ideas. And that was a team that had no vision. There was no consistency in how we were, all of the like manager level roles on that team were being utilized, what the expectations were, how we were being held accountable. There was nothing. So it was very much a free for all. And I just really wanted to be able to recreate what she did for
Mhm.
sales in my own way. And, so I just asked her, can you mentor me? I had no idea really what I was asking for. And she was so gracious with her time and very, very thoughtful in the way that she helped me. I'm sure you can tell, and as someone who has similar strengths as mine, there is like not a lot of good that comes out of do it this way. I needed to like get there on my own, and I just really appreciated her approach. And I still will ask her for her thoughts on things still today, and we have a great friendship. The second person that I think has been had the most impact on my career still works for Peak. She's my counterpart on the operations side. Her name is Mandy Elmore. A lot of student housing people will probably recognize that name.
Mhm.
She's been all over. She's been with Peak for 15 years. And I had the opportunity to work directly for her when I was coming up, when I was traveling full time for Peak, in and out of distressed properties. And I learned so many um, lessons on partnership,
Mhm.
the value of being direct and not like holding punches, but also saying things in a way that people can hear you and will be motivated to address the problem, change behavior, whatever that is. But I also learned so much about strategy, property
Mhm.
strategy. And I mean, just by being around her, she was it very early on, it wasn't like she was teaching me, here's how you can evaluate, here's some
Yeah.
KPIs to look for. Just by being around her, I just really liked how quickly she could do all of that on the fly. And that was a huge influence on how I approach tackling problems for new deals we're bringing on or underperforming deals or anything like that, to just create that value for our clients, but also be a good support partner to our regional managers.
Mhm.
And I learned a ton from her in that.
So when you think about these two ladies, what is the feeling that emerges from you as you describe them? You got some really good practicals from them, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering, how do you feel as you talk
Mm.
about them?
Gratitude. Yeah. It's usually the word I use to describe a lot of things when it comes to my career, including my relationships with them. I think that it is so special, and more rare than it should be, probably, to find a relationship with another woman in your industry where there's no competition.
Mm.
Even when I do things that inspire them, because I'm still great friends with both of them, and Mandy and I still work together today. There's always it's always from a place of respect. Like, I really like the way that you did that. I'm gonna start doing that. Can you tell me more about how you got started? But there's no like, I can't be as great as Ashly. There's none of that. Or Ashly doesn't know her place, because the other thing that both of those women have in common is they're older than me. They have more experience than me. And, it can sometimes be, probably in my head more than others, like a weird
Mm.
dynamic to be now like peer level with someone that used to work
Yep.
for directly, like 8 years ago. And it's an interesting dynamic, but it has never, not once, changed the type of relationship that I have with both of them. And it's just it's rooted in respect, and because of that I have so much gratitude.
Oh, so many questions here, but we're coming. Why is it so rare?
That's a
Why is
really
that
good question.
relationship so rare?
That's a good question. First of all, I think a lot of it is like, um, I don't want to get like too intense on here, but a lot of it is
Let's get
embedded in
intense.
women, right? Like, first of all, there's not a lot of seats at the executive table for most property management companies. For most companies, there are fewer seats that come open, and especially at Peak. If you look at the tenure of
Mhm.
everybody on the executive team, it is very common that 14, 15 plus years is the case. There's even fewer seats for women. And when you're in, I can only explain my experience, but like I'll
Mhm.
never forget my first strategic retreat. It's a big deal. Every vice president above is invited to it. It's when we lay out the goals for the upcoming year. And um, I will just never forget how intimidated I was by that. And, going into that space knowing I'm one of few women. Few is probably not the right word because there's good women, like female representation at Peak, but I was one of only three women of color in the room of
Mhm.
20 plus people. Um, the youngest in the room. So the tolerance for mistakes goes way down in my head and maybe in reality too, but that's just the environment that like every woman coming up is bracing for impact for.
Mhm.
And when you're trying to be the top, when you're trying to perform at the highest level, it's natural to compare yourself to the other people like you in the room.
Mhm.
And the fact that, Peak has allowed me to find these relationships with not just those two, but multiple women where that's not the case, that is so special.
Mhm. There is a book called The Other Half of the Sky. I
Hmm.
believe it's based off of a Chinese and Asian proverb that women hold up the other half of the sky.
Hmm.
And in my previous role, I was surrounded by a lot of strong women.
Yeah.
When I got married, my grandfather-in-law said that my wife came from a long line of strong women. But what I find is encouraging about your story and about these women and what Peak has done is that they've allowed your voice and your perspective to be shared.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I've learned a long time ago to listen.
Hmm.
And I think it's been really impactful because you hold up the other half of the sky. And
Hmm.
it's a pretty fascinating idea. If you're a boomer or if you grew up Gen X and you have a different mindset than is in the atmosphere today. So that I'm encouraged by it. And I actually feel that gratitude that you're articulating. So I could continue asking questions. I want to ask you one more to get us out of here. When you think about vision, about
Hmm.
what's next for student housing, I mean, the money's been on the sidelines, and then we heard the money was in the dadgum, it wasn't even in the stadium actually in 2023. 2024, they left, they came into the stadium, blah, blah, blah.
We're trying to
So
figure it out. Yeah.
vendors like Bonfire, we want you guys to make money so that we have that
Totally.
downflow of money. But I'm curious whether it's with AI, centralization, whatever, what is the vision that you're like, man, this is what I see for student housing, maybe multifamily, maybe just for Peak, maybe for you, but what is the vision that you're kind of seeing that's um, coming down, I guess, the timeline?
Yeah, I think, and I'd love to be super original with this question. I have thought about it since you sent me over. Um, let's think about this. Out of necessity, I do think that is how we started with innovation and the need for automation and centralization and AI and all the things. At peak, and personally, I have felt this shift to being just more hungry to do cool things and try new approaches and find hacks and create more efficiencies and do more with less. So now, for me, it's like less about needing to cut expenses and manage the expense side of the equation with everything that's going on with interest rates and all of that. And now it is more about almost like the challenge to find a new way to do it, a better way to do it, all of it, whether that's on the operations side of the house, sales and marketing, even just, like I'm so fascinated by like how can we, if you think about it, student housing, not just student housing, but Peak is feeling it on the student front. Our turnover for leasing consultants
Mm.
is over 100%. How do you staff? and build a training program that is effective and can also handle that level of churn. I mean, you're basically like onboarding 20 new people a week. How do you keep up with that without it costing hundreds of thousands of dollars? In order to keep up with it with humans, you would need like 20 to 30 trainers.
Yeah.
That's not sustainable. That's not scalable. Um, so maybe we shouldn't try to fix the leasing consultant problem. Maybe we try to fix like find a different way that is through automation or innovation. That's what I get like so energized by. And I think that that is going to continue to be the focus for at least the next 5 years.
Hmm.
I don't know. I think we're all trying a lot of different ways and a lot
Right.
of different things, but I don't think that we've landed on what the right way is.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
the vision leaks and it has to adapt. It's like if it doesn't change, if it doesn't morph,
Mhm.
then you're that's where I said at the beginning, vision or die. That's when the death happens. If you
Yeah.
cannot pivot quickly, and that seems to be happening more and more. So, Ashley, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Should people follow you on the gram? Are you a LinkedIn lunatic?
Sure.
Do you know about that, by the way?
Am I a LinkedIn lunatic? No.
You're not, but I know people in our space that are. They've made it
Okay.
to this Reddit post called LinkedIn Lunatic. Check it in the
Okay.
comments. I'm not joking. It's in there. I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, but I love
I'm gonna
it.
have to.
So
Yeah,
yeah, where should they
add
find you if
me
they want to follow you?
Add me on LinkedIn. I will say I am the worst, as you know, at LinkedIn messages. But I do try to check it like monthly if I can remember. And then on Instagram, it's like underscore the AP or the AP underscore. What a millennial thing
VIP.
of me to not know my Instagram handle. But
Yeah.
yeah, feel free to add me.
All right. Well, you're precious. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for
Thank you.
watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks, John.